Hello, Econ kids. This is going to be the first of my reviews, and it's probably going to be a pretty short one today. Um, and the notes for this review, you don't need to send me pictures of till Friday. So I'll do a review today, one tomorrow, and one Thursday, and then we'll do some kind of online test or quiz on Friday. And you can give me all the notes then. All right, so and the hardest thing I'll be doing this week is absolute and comparative advantage. All right, so moving along here, remember you're going to take notes. All right, first thing we're talking about is the production possibilities curve. College Board has told us that there is not going to be any graphs on the essays this year, so we don't really know how that's going to work. We think they're probably just going to ask you questions that you need to know the graphs to answer. Let's talk about the PPF. And there's some assumptions. The assumptions are you're at full employment. Now remember, full employment is synonymous with the natural rate of unemployment. We're going to be going over that. Remember, there's repeated ways to look at that. Full employment, natural employment. The United States, for the record right now, is way under full employment. We went from having the hottest economy in our history, probably to one of the worst economies in our history. They think eventually this could be worse than the Great Depression. Hopefully, it will be shorter than that. It'll be kind of whiplash-like where it drops then comes back. But full employment is where you only have those first two types of unemployment, okay? And we'll be referring to this a lot. So the assumptions in the PPF is you have full employment and you have fixed resources and technology. In other words, so there's no way to get any extra coal or oil or anything like that, and you can't make your computers any faster. So this is if you're operating along that line, you have fixed resources and technology. Movements, what would shift the PPF? If you move along the curve, you remember the PPF, it looks like a triangle and there's a line, either a straight line if the trade-offs are fixed, or bowed out if there's increasing opportunity costs. We'll be going over that again. But if you move along the line, all that's showing is opportunity cost. Okay, an outward shift illustrates economic growth. And remember, that's what every economy wants. I believe there will probably be a PPF question on the essays this year, but it'll probably give you some scenario, and then it'll say what happens to the PPF. If something has happened to make the economy grow and make it possible for the economy to do more things, then it would be a shift outward. If something happens that causes it to drop inward, that shows the reverse. It shows economic decrease. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later. An inward shift indicates destruction of resources. Like if a hurricane hit and destroyed a lot of your resources. I don't know how this current situation works with the coronavirus. Our electrical grid is up, our streets are open, our hospitals are crowded, but I don't think you would see an indication right now that there's a destruction of resources. But clearly, we're operating well inside our PPF. I know there's a pork plant up in, I guess, Michigan, Minnesota, one of those places up there that makes 5% of the pork products in the United States that recently shut down. And there's a big worry that that will cause a decrease in our food supply, clearly at least 5% in as far as pork products. That would not be a destruction of our resources. They're still there, but it's not a bad analogy. All right, producing capital goods, and we're going to show all this on the graph here in a minute, will lead to greater economic growth. Butter will lead to more growth than guns. And remember, the guns or butter argument is basically what are you focused on? Domestic issues or defense, which is basically foreign affairs. And that's the old Republican Democrat argument, conservative liberal. What is, the more argument? When I was in high school, I had this history teacher. I had her 2 or 3 times, actually probably just twice. I had her for a class called civics, and she would always say Republicans are more focused on foreign affairs, and Democrats are more focused on domestic issues. And that was always the theory. In the past, there was actually somebody that said in the last election that they wish they could have voted for Trump for domestic affairs and Clinton for foreign affairs, which would have been exactly backwards of the old adage, that, the Democrats are more concerned with domestic and Republicans with foreign affairs. That's what this butter versus guns argument means. All right, moving on here. So here is the PPF. And as you see here, the graph is bowed out. Let me see if I can use this. You see it's bowed out here like this. That means there's an increasing opportunity cost. I don't know if I can draw a straight line with this, but if it was straight, that would show constant opportunity cost. And so anyway, what you see here is capital goods up here and consumer goods down here. I guess I have to lower this so you can see that. Consumer goods. Now remember, you're going to draw this in your notes. If you want to pause it, you need to write all this down. So this is capital goods. And remember what capital goods are. They're goods that produce other goods, or it's productive machinery. And so sometimes when I give this as a regular essay question, I say for consumer goods, instead of saying consumer goods, I'll say pizzas, and I'll say for capital goods, pizza ovens. Well, obviously, if you focus on pizzas, you're more concerned about the current, this would be like someone who's interested in the short term because you want to feed as many people as possible. But in the long run, if you want to make more pizza, you need to invest more in capital goods. So this C position here, this would be someone more focused on the short term. Let's feed as many people as possible, or let's give them as much as they want right now. If you produce at A, then your people are going to have less now. Doesn't mean they're going to starve or anything, or they're not going to have enough, but they're going to have less. But in the future, they're going to have more. Some people argue B is a smarter situation. I don't think they're ever going to ask you that on the AP macro exam, not if it's all essay. But I want you to look here, point A, B, and C. These are all efficient. They're efficient. They're also desirable. These are all efficient. E is not possible at the current level of resources. Well, I mean, there's two lines here. If this was where we were now, E is where we want to be one day, but something's going to have to change. D means something is wrong. Now, I doubt that we're at D right here in the United States right now. I imagine we're somewhere up in here, but we are currently inside our PPF. People are staying home. Places are, factories are closed down. We are absolutely not producing what we could. And so that is a perfect example of a recession. Okay, make sure you have all this down. I will somehow work this into your essay questions or your questions we're going to do Friday. Don't know how we're going to do that just yet, but we'll be doing, it by Zoom, or I may try to use the big blue button conference we've been using Zoom, but just understand these big points. All right, let's talk about the three economic systems in the world. Number one is a capitalistic or free market system, and most decisions are made by private businesses. There is no 100% free market system. If you were on an island with 5 people and no government, I seriously imagine somebody would be in charge, or the 5 people would pick a leader, or they would try to set some kind of rules. If you set some kind of rules, that means there's a government. So there's really no 100% free market economies anywhere. But remember, there's a spectrum here, and I always do the spectrum here, and there's a line in the middle. And the United States is closer to a free market than we are a command economy. We're on, further to that side. But all the economies in the world fall somewhere along this spectrum. But if the decisions are made mostly by private businesses, you're a capitalistic or free market system. And right now, if you want to go out still and buy a pink umbrella, you can buy a pink umbrella. You can buy a blue umbrella. And if everyone starts buying blue umbrellas, as the swim coach, I know a lot about selling blue and white umbrellas because that's our number one money maker for swimming. I can tell you that if people want more, we'll make more. All our umbrellas come from China. That may change in the future, but that's where we've gotten them in the past. And whenever I put my order in for like 100 new umbrellas, it takes 2 weeks to get them because they're coming in from China. The second type of economy, I don't really think you'll ever see the word communism on an AP macro exam, or socialism, either one. They're just two politically charged terms. And as my econ teacher would say, most people don't understand it anyway. They have a limited understanding of it. It's too late, you guys are seniors. I don't mean it that way. But I mean, if you really wanted to know, I think in European history, we probably go into the most detail about this. But anyway, I don't think you'll see communism. You might see command economy. Trying to think if there's any other way to say it. But most decisions are made by the government. They choose how many cars are going to be made, what kind of cars are going to be made. They choose where you live, what kind of place you have access to. A lot of the command economies out there, the famous ones in history like the Soviet Union, if you made good grades in school, if you were a good athlete, the government chose what you were going to do. You were going to be in the military. You did not, it was not up to you. But generally in economics class, we're talking about decisions, what will be produced, how are you going to employ the factors of production. All right, so there's the two different major types of economic systems, at least on the poles. In the middle is the third type, the mixed economy, which has both. And that's what we have. For instance, in most cities, you only have one hospital per region. You only have one cable company, at least that used to be the system. You only have one power company. Those are, the government makes that decision. They're not going to allow 5 different power companies in the same area. So we do have some command economy features, but we're mostly a free market or capitalist society. And you can write down that's what we have, and that's what most countries have. I know Bernie Sanders is out of the race now, but somebody asked him once, he uses that word socialism. They said, which country do you most respect? In one of his debates, he mentioned Denmark. And some people believe that Denmark, which has a strong social safety net, actually is a lot freer. I read this big article from the Cato Institute that their economy in many ways is freer than ours. I don't know if it's true or not, just throwing that out there. There's a lot of talk about this. You can look it up, and I might be wrong on that. Although he did say he likes Denmark. All right, moving on here. We're going to be talking about supply and demand. And so let's talk about the factors that change demand. Now, this is not aggregate supply we're talking about here. We're reviewing Unit 1. What I'm doing this week is trying to review most of Unit 1 and Unit 2. And in Unit 1, we talk about basic supply and demand, not aggregate supply and aggregate demand. However, there are some things that are the same. There are obviously, some similarities. All right, so let's write down the changes here. All right, when does demand change? When income changes. Right now, our big problem here in the United States is a lot of people. I just got I thought my wife and I made too much money last year, but they looked at adjusted gross income. And when I checked my bank account yesterday, we had gotten our stimulus payment, both of us. Smaller than what they're giving most people because of the amount of money we made, but we still got it. But the reason the government is giving money to people making under a certain level, which is where most Americans are. I mean, the billionaires and the millionaires aren't getting anything from the government. The reason they're given that is a lot of people have no job now. And there was a big argument about this, that the poor people should get more, and I believe they should have, because they're being hurt worse than this. As a lot of them have these lower income jobs, which especially service jobs, which are being dropped right now, or they're being fired or laid off because of the coronavirus scare. And so they've had a dramatic drop in income. And so what's going to happen is the demand for most products is going to go down. When this thing is over and these people get their jobs back, which I hope they do, income should go back up. So demands for individual products will go up. Now, of course, aggregate demand is for the entire economy. We're just talking about for one specific item, like say peanut butter. Although I think the demand for peanut butter right now is pretty high. Related products, complements and substitutes. I hope you remember what these things are. A complement is something that goes with something, like peanut butter goes with jelly. Chocolate goes with, marshmallows. Bicycles go with bicycle helmets. Those are complements. If the price of bicycles go way up, the demand for bicycle helmets will go down. A substitute is something that you can buy in place of. And my example I always use is Dr. Pepper and Mr. Pibb. If Dr. Pepper gets too expensive, Dr. Pepper fanatics will buy Mr. Pibb. Anyway, we're going to stop the first video right here.